Many young children interpret a dog's growl as a smile. And I think that's something a lot, like when I read that, I was like, whoa, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I was very cautious at that time. But then she lunged again when I had, I don't know, one of the kids I had on the changing table. And that's when I understood this is not, she never jumped.
Dogs have completely different social rules or social skills than humans do.
I can imagine rehoming her because that's what it felt like. And that's how dogs should be treated. It shouldn't be that, oh, you can climb on Bella because it's our dog and she's not going to do anything. But this is the problem that I have.
Hi, parents, and welcome to Toddler Toolkit podcast. We are so lucky because we have Dominika Knossalla-Pado with us. She is someone who has worked doing essential work, helping families with both dogs and young children. Dominika has been a professional dog trainer since 2008 and is a graduate of the Academy of Dog Trainers, often called the Harvard of Dog Training, where she earned honors. She spent several years living in New York City. She gained something even more meaningful after moving there, her beloved dog Lola, which I'm sure she's going to tell us more about, that she adopted from a shelter. Everything changed when she brought home her newborn twins. As a fellow twin mom, I totally relate to this with Dominika. And Lola had a predatory reaction to her twins. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we chat with Dominika. And she said it was something that was rare, scary, and something most parents would have no idea how to handle. And because Dominika did know what to do, she realized instantly that other families needed these tools too. So if you're feeling like you really want to know what Dominika is going to say about that, stay tuned because we're going to talk about that. And that's what really led her to create Dog Meets Baby in 2020, a platform that now offers trusted, free and paid resources, digital courses, safety guides, and training that supports expecting parents and families with babies and young children. And I'm so excited because also her very first children's book is coming out soon, Lola and the Bubble Mission. And it's truly perfect for toddlers and little animal lovers. And that book should be coming out very soon. Welcome, Dominika.
Thank you so much for having me and this great introduction.
Oh, you're welcome. And how soon is your book coming out? Is it next week or is it already out?
No, it's next week. So it's Lola is the dog that you mentioned. She is not with us, but her birthday would be December 11th. So yes, that was, I chose this date not thinking that it was her birthday, but as soon as I realized, oh my God, this is Lola's birthday, I was like, it's a sign. We have to keep it.
Oh my gosh. That is so sweet. That is so sweet that it comes out on her birthday. And that's very special. So we all look forward to that. And at the end of this episode, I will post links to where you can get all the information from Dominika if you're interested in finding out more about the book or following her on social media. We'll get to that after we get into her story. Dominika has been featured on Good Morning America, The Farmer's Dog, Betches, Moms Holding Space, and Happy as a Mother, and so many other platforms that help parents as well. And we know that this is now a worldwide resource that I wish that I could find. I think it was about 3 years ago that I was looking for support. And while I didn't see it at the time, and now that I found Dominika, I found her through Instagram, actually, I wish I would have had that resource back then. So I know I'm so happy to have you on my podcast because I know there's parents who've been thinking about this, looking for resources, and maybe they haven't run into you yet. This is really exciting to have you on there. And so before the book that's about to come out and before you had all these resources online, there was a moment in a park when you saw a trainer working with dogs and something inside of you shifted. So sometimes we can be called to things we haven't done before, even if they're uncertain, we're not really sure where they're going to take us. And sometimes we say yes to them. And Dominika, she had a stable career. She was living, you were in England, I believe, right, Dominika?
At that time, I was actually in Warsaw, in Poland. Yeah, but I lived in London too, yes.
Yeah, so she was in Poland and she left her country. She'll tell us more about this. And so she had this moment where she saw the dog at the park. And what were you feeling in that moment when you decided, or you felt that you were called to something? Were you feeling a little curious, a little nervous? Was there anything to help you trust the path that you took, even if you didn't understand?
It wasn't like I saw it, and it was as if like lightning struck me, because I immediately thought that's what I want to do in life. But I didn't really drop everything and moved overseas. So it wasn't like that. It was, I decided first to sign up for an internship with a dog training school to see if I even like it. And I did like it a lot. And then I decided that if I want to do it professionally, I need to learn more about this, not just find a mentor. And I applied to the Academy for Dog Trainers that is, now it's online, but back then it was in San Francisco in California, and I was accepted. And yeah, that's how it started. So yes, I was very lucky that a good friend of mine lived in San Francisco, and so I had a place to stay. And then I came for 3 months. I stayed for 14 years, over 14 years. And then like right now we're traveling, but we will be going back again to San Francisco next year.
That's exciting. Yeah. So when you were going to go to San Francisco for the program, how did you feel? Like, I know you said you had the friend, but were you a little bit nervous, or was there anything coming up for you? Or did you feel like this is what I'm meant to do? I'm just going for it.
I'm sure I was nervous, but it was mostly excitement. I was single back then. I didn't have a dog. It was very easy just to make this decision, right? Like right now we're thinking about we're moving, but right now this decision is not so simple. You have a friend and kids and dogs, and they go to school. This is very complicated. It's not just like packing. You have to like plan in advance so many things. And so it was just very easy. I was very excited. Yeah, it was my dream, because I wanted to work with animals, and I just decided to do something else. And I was very happy that I was going back to my original dream.
We're so glad you took the step to do that, because now benefiting so many parents and helping spread the message is so important. And so then there came Lola, and you found your dream dog in a shelter in New York City. Tell us more about Lola, how she entered your life, and how that changed the trajectory of what you thought you were doing into what you decided how you were going to help serve people. And
yeah, so I went to the academy, and then I was traveling and going to, there are so many great schools and so many great trainers that it was just, the academy was just the beginning. And I was just so eager to learn that I was signing up for various courses and conferences. So I was traveling and learning. And then, of course, at some point I had to start working. And I met my ex-boyfriend on a plane. And then I moved to New York City, where he lived. And again, it was like all adventure and fun. And the relationship didn't last. But then after the breakup, I was ready to get my very first dog. So I got Lola from a shelter where I was canine nose work instructor, which is the scent detection. And I was going to the shelter and working with the dogs doing the scent work. And then I saw Lola, and there was already a wait list, and she was just surrendered like an hour or two earlier. But because I was a trainer and they knew that she was a lot, because that was the reason why she was surrendered, and because I was coming there and helping them, they told me I could have her. And I was looking for a dog, so I asked them if I could foster her first to see if that's the kind of dog that made the list of I wanted, because I really wanted a dog to compete in scent work. So that was my dream. And I was already fostering dogs and looking for my dog, my dream dog. But I knew that she was my dog. And I remember my roommate, I had roommates back then, they said, "Oh, we knew she's staying. You said she was a foster. We knew she's not going anywhere."
oh, they could sense the bond you had with Lola right away.
Yeah, she was just such a great dog.
So you have Lola, and you said something, actually, I just want to clarify for our listeners. You said she was surrendered. Is that what does that mean for those of us who don't understand what that means as far as that?
It was that the family that had her, she was a handful. They didn't have time for her, and she had a lot of energy. So she destroyed quite a lot in their house. When she got out of the crate, she spent the whole time they were at work, working on remodeling their place. It was quite impressive. And yeah, she was brought to the shelter, and they said it like, we really want her to go to someone who can meet her energy levels, and she deserves better.
Yeah. So it sounds like she was too much of a handful for the people who had her before.
Yeah.
And enter you, who has the dog training in the background and has the time for her energy.
But
And you find out you have twins.
well, but that was 4 years later. Yes, I had plenty of time to train her, to do nose work, so but I was, during those 4 years, we were very much together most of the time. We did a lot of stuff together. We took classes, we did training sessions. Every holiday, I was at a training camp or competing. So she was my fur baby.
I totally understand that. That's how I was with my first dog too, which I might mention later. So she was your first fur baby, but you did find out and you did have twins, and I'm also a twin mom too. So I totally understand like the amount of energy that goes into that. And if you don't have twins and you don't have friends friend mom that has twins, that you might not know. So it's a lot managing two babies at the same time, and then you have a dog mixed in. So you mentioned, I was reading that you said Lola had a predatory reaction. So if you could tell us about that, what was going through your mind, and how did your training that you've had help prepare you for how to navigate that?
Yes, it was a very scary experience, and it's very rare. So to the listeners, don't panic. This is something that most of the people are never going to see in their dog. It's a very rare behavior, and it happened really fast. It wasn't that you have time to think about this and analyze. I just, like, when I look back now, it's the feeling that this is not what was supposed to happen. She was supposed to be happy to see my kids, and instead she approached the crib in a very different manner. And I was still quite in disbelief after that happened, and we still had her loose. I was very cautious at that time. But then she lunged again when I had, one of the kids I had on the changing table. And that's when I understood this is not, she never jumped. She was so well trained, and her body language was very different. So that's when I fully separated her, and I started crying and telling my husband, I can imagine rehoming her, because that's what it felt like she's hunting for my newborn babies, and she's my fur baby, and I don't know what to do.
Totally understand where you're coming from. Not exactly the same experience as you. It sounds like Lola was lunging or coming at the cribs or coming and jumping up, and you were feeling like you just had to protect your twins and keep them safe, while also feeling like it's hard because you also love your dog too. But how do you make that all work together? The postpartum.
Yeah. And the hormones, right? And, one of my kids was in the NICU. That was also not expected because they were early term. So there was just a lot, and I was on modified bed rest for 2 months, many complications. So it was just all that stress just hit me in that moment. And I think that just made it so much worse, because I was finally home, and finally I had my kids, and all those 2 months that I was on bed rest, it paid off, and my kids were doing well, and my son was out of the NICU, and here this happens, and it was just too much.
That sounds like that was a lot. And like what I experienced was almost different than what Dominika experienced. And for our listeners, maybe you relate to one of the other of our stories. Some dogs, like you see, like right away, there's something with the baby. But my dog, she was a Weimaraner, and she actually did well when they were babies. She was more distant. She would curl on the ground and look over them, and it seemed like it could be okay. But she didn't get as much attention. But it seemed like we were skating by with that for the first year and a half. And then 18 months and beyond, 2 years, when they started walking, scooting, and they could hit around with their hands, that's when it all changed. And something I read in your kind of how you help parents, and the things you talk about is dogs getting cornered. And the twins, my boys would corner her in a little section, would hit at her. And it started weird dynamic where then anytime she saw them, she would go into a stress state. And then they would be half, this is fun, half, I'm scared of her. So it was depending on, were they able to hit her? That was fun. Was she giving them like a sign maybe that they were picking up on? They were scared of her and running away. So it felt like it was always like managing so much. And she would take her mouth and put it over my hand, not bite down, but just, it was like a warning to me anytime they were around. And every time she would do that warning with the teeth, And I was like, I need to listen up. And I found it hard because also when you deal with situations like this, you need all adults on the same page. And I didn't have that with the other adults around my kids. And it really complicated things. We ended up rehoming her through Get Your Pet and to honestly a much better home for her, even though I probably cried for 3 months before because I knew it was coming. But I'm glad she's in a good home now. And the thing was that it happened later, more in the toddlerhood, where your story happened right away when they were babies. And I remember looking for resources and not really being able to find a whole lot of things. And I talked to some different people. They were like, a lot of it was send your dog away for a few months and they'll train them and they send them back and then they overlook and there's and this and that. And so I know not everybody, and I thought of her life and I was like, no, she's going to have a better life and I didn't have the expertise you have, Dominica.
Yeah. No, of course. And it's hard. It's just, what you said that everyone has to be on board. And the fact that you listened before something happened, I always tell parents, it's so much easier to before a bite and so much harder after a bite. And it changes everything. Like I wouldn't have Lola if someone didn't choose to give her a different home. So I'm very thankful.
I think like it really, in some cases, we can work through things. In other cases, maybe rehoming is the best. There's definitely great resources out there for that to make sure they're going to a good family. And we love them. We want to make sure they're going to be safe wherever they're going to go. And so telling these stories, thinking about these things, your story, my story, and there's other parents right now that are going through uncertainty. And when did you realize that these resources weren't as available as they should be to parents that are going through similar situations as ours?
I wasn't really looking for them because I knew what to do in that moment when it happened, right? So I wasn't really looking for much. And when you're like 7 days postpartum, you're not necessarily online looking for information unless you really have to. So it was later when I realized after everything happened that I didn't really, like as much as I knew about predation, it never came up in the context of babies. It's not like it has never been mentioned, but really maybe one trainer in a very long article, one sentence. That's all I could find on this topic. And after I had my kids, I was already working. I was always working with families. I definitely worked a lot before I had my kids, and I did work a lot. I did many private consultations and group classes. And so I started working more with families who were expecting and who were having children, and I could really relate to them. And from time to time, I had a case that was either predation or aggression, and not that many, of course. But it was just me and maybe some other trainers doing this. So then it was actually before the pandemic. The pandemic gave me time in some way to work on this, but it was before the pandemic. It was when I met a coach, Sasha, and I told her my story. Sobbing. At that time, I cried every time I was talking about this. It was very fresh. And she looked at me and she said, that's your mission in life. Like, you should have a course on this and write a book. And I looked at her crying. I was like, what are you talking about, lady? I just met you. And but later we started working together. And she was the one who just made it. It's not that I didn't think about it, but she was the one who believed in me and she helped me to make it happen initially.
Oh, that's great that you had somebody who believed in you, was there for you, and she obviously heard what you were saying. And I'm curious to know, from the time that Lola was lunging at your babies to you knowing what to do, how long did that process take before it sounded like you separated her from the babies a bit? How long did that process take for her to calm down?
Yeah, I think I don't remember exactly, but I think the next day I sent her back to the dog walker. I'm pretty sure that's what we did. She stayed at the dog walkers for probably 2 or 3 days because I needed time to think how to approach it. And I knew that having her home was not safe, or it was extremely stressful and not safe. And I don't want to go into details how I approached it because these are the cases. Predation is serious. This is not a dog that is afraid. This is not a dog it's not out of fear. They do it very motivated. So it's very important that you do address it if it happens with a trainer because this is serious. I knew what to do, but I relied strongly on the foundation that I had. And I think that's what made me realize later that a lot of times when I work with parents, it does come down to how much preparation, how much training does the dog have? Because if something happens, and it doesn't, my case is extreme, right? Like it was extreme for a reason. Probably so I have dog meets baby, and it was the right person that it happened to. That's how I see it now. Even if I had to choose, I don't know if I would choose it, to be honest. But a lot of times something happens that a reaction that the parents did not expect. Let's say they were expecting the dog to be happy and the dog is whining or barking when the child cries, or maybe jumps and tries to get to the baby, lots of sniffing, doesn't listen, or muzzle punches the crib. And that makes you very anxious. And so it can be still within limits sometimes, but for this parent, for you as a new mom, new dad, that's too much. That's very stressful. And especially if the dog you have never seen it. You have never seen your dog do anything like that. And the first thing that you need to do, and you will do, you're going to separate the dog right away. Now, if the dog has never been separated from you, that you never closed the door, you never had a gate before, that's a tough moment to introduce a gate or close the door, because the dog is already stressed because there is the baby. Parents are not acting as they usually do. They don't really have time to play fetch, or the walk happens later. Things are different, right? So that's what causes more stress. And then a lot of times if you don't have that simple step, the dog being comfortable being separated, that's when the dog is getting more stress. And then it's a tricky.
And it reminds me a little bit with my dog, Bella, where she was a runner, and the breed is known to be a Velcro dog. And so when I learned I need to be separating her more from them, it was like you said, she's never been separated before like that. She was a little bit when they were babies, but not to the extent she was all of a sudden now when they were toddlers, because of them both being afraid of or having anxiety over each other. So she was just so sad, like in a different room. And it was just, I felt so bad for her, but I knew it wasn't safe if I let her come in. And then it leads to so many questions, I think, for parents. Like it leads to, when is a safe time to have them around if they're both nervous, or if one of them is nervous, when can we build positive experiences, or when should we not, or how long is it going to be this? I think our mind can just spin, and then you add on lack of sleep, toddler sleep regression, you're up at night, and then it just, like you said, it's so overwhelming, and we just want somebody to tell us what to do and to not have to figure it all out on our own, because it's simply overwhelming for sure.
Yeah, it is. And it was even very overwhelming for me as a trainer, because as much as I knew a lot about dogs, I didn't know much about kids' behavior. So there were many surprises.
Yes, kids for sure. And we've all heard that ourselves too, being a parent with kids, let alone our dogs having to transition. We have to transition too. Our dogs certainly do too. And we don't think about that because we're so busy. But that's why it's so great you have resources for parents to be, whether you're listening in and you're already in the moment with a situation, or if you're expecting, or maybe you already have a child who's older and is good with the dog, but you're expecting, and now you feel a little nervous. Now there's resources here with Dominika to help support you. And it makes me think also of sometimes babies may not be quite as aware as they get a little bit older. Toddlers, they may have more worries, kind of anxiety about the dog, or vice versa. The dog is uncomfortable, whether it's a baby or a toddler, right? So it just depends on the situation. And I wonder, what are some of the signs a dog is feeling comfortable with a baby or toddler, even if it looks like tolerance? Because I was reading some information from you, maybe on one of your resources, which Dominika has awesome free resources. And she mentioned tolerance. And I thought that is such an important thing to talk about, because often when we see tolerance, we go, oh, it's fine. They're tolerating it. Maybe they're building a muscle by tolerating. But Dominika is going to let us know, what are some of the signs, and also, what does it mean if it looks like tolerance? Should we still be concerned?
So tolerance, a lot of times the way people use it is that when a child hits a dog, or climbs on the dog, or climbs on the dog's bed, or hugs the dog, or pets the dog in a very way. And people say, oh, my dog is so tolerant, and some say likes it. And there are many viral videos that show it, that claim it. Now, if I look at the body language, because dogs don't speak, but they communicate with their bodies, and I see signs of stress, and the signs of stress, some are very subtle, subtle and some it takes a while to learn them. And some are more obvious. So most people know that when a dog shows teeth or they growl, you hear the growl, that's a warning. But the subtle signs of stress, that would be the dog being very stiff. A lot of times the eyes are much bigger, so you see the whites of the eyes. They don't look directly at the child, so it's the side eye or whale eye. The ears may go back. The tail is tucked or lower. Dogs can yawn when they're not tired, or lip lick or nose lick when there is no food present. So there are many different signs. These are probably the most obvious ones. They lean away when someone reaches and tries to pet them. They look frozen. So this is the dog communicating or they lick. Not a gentle lick. It would be a more pushy lick when it's often interpreted as doggy kisses. But if you look at the licking with the body language, the other signs, in the context, a toddler climbing on a dog, then you would know that it's actually not doggy kisses. It's the dog telling the child back off in a still very gentle way. And so it's something that I talk about a lot. I do reels and carousel posts, and we have a course and freebies where I talk about dog body language, because a lot of times when I work with private clients, I work online, and people ask parents to send me videos from before the bite happened. And we look at that, when we look together at the videos, and the parents they know once I explain what we're looking at, and they know what they're looking at, that becomes very obvious. They're like, oh, I wish I didn't. I felt my dog liked it. Now I can see how much my dog was asking for space. And it's not a common knowledge. And I think social media are great that I can share about it and our trainers, but there are also many people who share the very unsafe interactions, but their dogs are very tolerant. Not always, because sometimes bites happen and they just don't talk about them, but they reach out to us, to me and other trainers when it happens. It's something that people show and then other people copy, and that's not safe. Many dogs are very tolerant until one day they may not be so tolerant. Dogs get older, they can be sick. Senior dogs are less tolerant. They may have arthritis, or it's just too much. They've been communicating. No one listens to the yawning and the ears back. And then one day they do more.
For sure. And I think that is the important thing to understand, is like what Dominika is saying is that, yeah, we definitely don't want to ignore the signs. And now that we're aware of them, that she shared them, and we may have known like one sign before, like maybe you heard if a dog tucks his tail low behind, almost under its body or feet, but
like it goes between the legs. Yeah.
And we may only know that one thing, or the hair standing up, but we didn't know the other ones. There's other signs. And I think it's so important to learn this if we are having children around our dog, but it's just not something that we think of, especially because we think of this is the most loving dog ever. There's never going to be an issue, but that's not true. It can be a very loving dog, and there can still be issues with kids because it's a transition. It's different. It's a dynamic the dog's never experienced before. So that's important. Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is hard.
Yeah.
There's another thing that it's like, even if your dog is tolerant, I'm going to use the example of a swimming pool. So for the past 3 years, we had a swimming pool. And the rule was, if you want to be in the swim, and my kids are a little bit older, they're in the primary school, so they are very good swimmers. They're on the swim team. It's not that their water's safe, but still, I have a rule. If you go in the water, you have to tell us. You do not enter the swimming pool. You have to tell an adult. And I have the same rule for our swimming pool, for our neighbor's swimming pool, for our community swimming pool, for our friend's swimming pool. The same rule. And that's how dogs should be treated. It shouldn't be that, oh, you can climb on Bella because it's our dog and she's not going to do anything. But then if your child has this rule at home and it's a 2 or 3-year-old, they may go to another house, they see a dog on a dog bed, they climb on this dog, and that dog is, I'm not even going to warn you, I'm just going to bite you right away because I don't know you, I'm not tolerant. So this is the problem that I have. It's teaching children, like every time you allow a certain behavior with little kids, right? The older kids, it's you can explain that different dogs you can treat them differently. But with little kids, it's very hard if you like this dog, or if you don't address it, right? Let's say you just don't address it, you assume that every dog is going to be tolerant, or that your dog is not going, or that your child is not going to approach your friend's dog or hug them. Because sometimes it's not necessarily hitting. Hugging is restraining to dogs. I work with many dogs, like the case that I actually had, the family that I work with 5 days ago. A 4.5-year-old wanted to hug the dog. He hugged her. She bit him on the face. Level 3 bite, 2 stitches. It doesn't mean that the child arrives and hits the dog or kicks the dog. No, hugging is also not something that dogs tolerate, because that's a restraint. And if you do it here, that's very unsafe because it's face to face.
Yeah. And dogs have completely different like social rules or social skills than humans do, where if we're making eye contact with somebody, that can mean we're open to them, that we're welcoming, but to a dog, it can mean you're challenging them, that makes them uncomfortable. Like it's a dominance type thing. Definitely what you're saying about like a kid coming right at a dog face to face, wrapping their arms around the dog. To the dog, it feels like restraint. And I think that's such a helpful reframe for parents to understand is, dog social skills, completely different than human social.
Yeah, they're animals with instinct. They are not, we can call them fur babies and kiss them and hug them as adults, but it's very different than when you do it as the dog parent, and it's very different when the child does it.
We've talked about how children who might feel comfortable around a dog and maybe goes too far, like hugging them, restraining them, or maybe being too direct in their personal space. But what about the flip side, where children or toddlers they're nervous around dogs, even if it's a dog that's completely friendly and maybe not even bothering them, maybe not even coming up to them, but they see the dog on a leash, or they see the dog like a few feet away and they're already feeling scared and fear. I'm sure there's a few things that you know about with that. The dogs can probably pick up on uncomfortable if a person's feeling uncomfortable, and how do we help the child get more comfortable with the dog without forcing them or without building on maybe them feeling uncomfortable? Are there positive ways to help children become more comfortable with dogs without obviously crossing that boundary of what the dog is comfortable?
Yes. Are we talking about the dog, the family dog, or that would be like the child is afraid of dogs in general?
Yeah, let's just say this isn't a family dog, but maybe parents want to get a dog, or
Gotcha.
There's neighborhood or family, maybe when they go for Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah.
They go for a holiday and there's dogs. There's parents listening and they're in that situation or that boat, and they want their kids to be more comfortable around their friends or family's dogs, but they don't know what.
Yes. So I went through this myself when my daughter was a little bit over 2. She came with our nanny to a puppy toddler class that I was teaching or running. And because I was teaching, I wasn't with her. And we accidentally we were always making sure that the puppies were on the smaller side and not very jumpy, but puppies are puppies. And the dog that came was it was a bigger puppy, still not big, but a little bit bigger, not like a tiny puppy. And the dog jumped on her twice. And that was it. She decided that she was terrified of dogs. And if there was a little tiny chihuahua minding her business a block away from us, she was screaming as if there was a lion coming at us. And she only was fine with our dog, with Lola. Any other dog, she was terrified. So I ended up working with a psychologist, and I actually have a blog post on that. So if you have families who go through this, we can share that link. But the first step was really not putting her in situations that would make it worse. So if there was a dog, let's say, coming to the park and was moving too close for her comfort, she would either stay in my arms or we would leave the park. So just really reassuring her that I've got her, that she's safe with me, then pointing out that the dog is on leash, which means the dog cannot approach us. to a point when she started noticing this and she was able to say, oh, this doggy is on leash and or like words. So that was definitely very like we're moving in the right direction. And then we started reading stories about dogs. And I knew that it was the jumping that caused it, and Lola was not a jumper. So I was definitely if there was a chance that we would go to a house where there was a jumpy dog, I would ask that family to put this dog away, or we wouldn't if that was not an option. I would not, like, it was very important that we never put her in situations where this could happen again. And it was just slowly moving in the right direction. What helped me is because I work with dogs. My client she had this tiny little, very sweet puppy, white fluffy puppy, and she wanted me to train her and she would live at my house. So I brought her home, and because she was so small and so cute and so fluffy and just a little toy, my daughter was not afraid of her, even if she like jumped a little bit. And of course I was making sure that it's very safe, and we had gates and we did treats and toys, but that helped her. And then I was able to bring another dog who was a little bit scared of children. So my daughter was a little bit scared of the dog. So they both were keeping a little bit of distance and then slowly warming up to each other. So basically you want to surround yourself or your child with dogs that are aloof, not friendly. This is what the mistake that people make. Now I brought Minnie because I knew, and I already tested it. I remember that I brought her, I told the client, I was like, okay, I need to take her just for a few hours. And if this is too much for my daughter, she cannot stay with me. But luckily she was at that time, it was 3 months later. So it wasn't the day after the dog jumped on her. And we've been working with her, reading books about dogs and their behavior and like talking about dog behavior. Yeah, you want to be your dog, you want to have your child around aloof dogs that just very neutral. And yeah, just if anyone needs more, the whole process with a child psychologist input is in the blog post.
Oh, that is so helpful, and something parents might not think about. They think a friendly dog is going to be a positive experience, but if your child is nervous around dogs, so much sense that Dominika shared. An aloof dog, that totally makes so much sense. It's just something that we
and
haven't thought.
Smaller. So like I think many families were coming to us. I have many friends who are coming to visit us with their children, and they knew Lola, they knew I was a trainer, but because she was a big dog and she was at the same level as the child, that was scary. And she was friendly. Friendly dogs are a little bit scary to children. So many families were asking me, let's make sure that Lola is not around my son because right now he's a little bit scared of dogs and she's just big.
Yeah. That communication also that you mentioned, the boundaries, communication with other people. It goes both ways, like you said, with your dog, with Lola, but also with your daughter and other people's dogs. If she was uncomfortable, can you please crate, or we're not going to come, or let's work this out together. What's best for the child also is going to be what's best for the dog and for everybody. And you mentioned, this is interesting because you also mentioned some kids might feel scared of a friendly dog, but this is also true that you cited that there was a 2016 study in the Journal of Veterinary Behavior showing that also many young children interpret a dog's growl as a smile. And I think that's something a lot, like when I read that, I was like, whoa, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's why. So my dog, Lola, she never growled in front of my children. And I was not looking for dogs so they could see a dog growling. I see it more as my role as a parent. Toddlers and dogs have to be supervised. And because I knew what I was looking at, I wasn't worried. So we need to know a little bit about the body language and then supervise. And if not, then manage, separate, or have some sort of a system where one is loose, one is confined, or if you have a backyard and the weather is nice, someone is outside. So it is, yes, it's something that when I read it, I was also very mindful about it, but it wasn't until much later that my children were around a growling dog. But it wasn't something that, to me, I was not showing them videos of a growling dog when I read. This wasn't really my priority. My priority was there's so much more that goes into it. And my job is to do everything that the dog does not growl at them so this is it's more about the whole system that you build.
I love that. And I'm sure we learn more about that whole system if you take one of Dominika's courses or read her resources. Just on time, I'm going to give you the option of either answering maybe one or both before we talk about your book. Would you rather talk about the high energy times like mealtime and why that could be riskier around children? Or would you rather talk about dogs at nighttime and how dogs' behavior can change at night and how that might have an influence on your family with kids?
I think the meal times, because that's the one where I think more people have issues with that.
Let's talk about that.
So here's my approach. It doesn't matter if your dog is great around you when they eat, or they growl at you, or other people when they eat their food. We don't test it with children. We just have a system where when the dog eats, we make sure that the child does not approach this dog, does not crawl up to that dog's bowl and they share it together and you can snap a cute picture. We don't do it because it's like using the pool analogy. This is a situation that even if your dog is tolerant, this is a very unsafe behavior to reinforce or allow. So this is once your child is mobile, when your dog eats, make sure that your child is not around. If you feed kibble, it is also a choking hazard. So there's another reason. And water can be, if it's a bigger bowl, it could be a drowning risk, but that's not even like for most people, it's the splashing. It's like that the kids just, that my kids were obsessed with it. I constantly had wet tiles. It was slippery. It was unsafe. And then I just decided, okay, we have to move it somewhere else because it's just not working. Lola never has water. The floors are always wet. I have to change every. It's messy and it's just not working.
I think that's really, do you think a lot of kind of misunderstood moments or moments that kind of turn into like a growl or even a bite could have been avoided? And it, in a lot of those instances, had to do with food. A child in a dog's bubble or space during mealtime, which is for a dog, it's not the same as where we like to sit next to each other, eat, share food at a table, right? But for dogs, it's different.
Yes, my kids are 9. I have the same rule when a dog eats, our dog, a different dog, I never want them to feel like you're going to take it away from them. It's very different when I work with adult clients and you can work on resource guarding. You can have great results. That's totally, it's a behavior that you can absolutely address through training, but you have to follow a certain protocol and it has to be followed. There are steps that you have to follow. You can't really mix them up because you might create a different problem or you're not going to solve this behavior. So that's, as you can imagine, how old are your children?
They're 4.5 right now.
4.5, right?
Yeah.
A 4.5-year-old is not going to repeat the same protocol over and over every day for, let's say, 15 to 20 minutes. Impossible. Even with my children, they're 9. Maybe we're getting there, right? Like with one of the child, yes, we can definitely do it. With the other one, I don't think so. Like he will be like, bye-bye. Like or he will like jump in the middle of the protocol, right? Do something because he has so much energy. So with little children, there's not really a safe way to address it. So if you cannot address it, then let's make sure that everyone is safe.
This is such an important thing for parents to hear. Let's talk about your book. What is the name of your book? And what inspired it? And I love the idea of your bubble concept. So tell us all about it.
Yes. Yeah, the title is Lola and the Bubble Mission. And it's the adventures of Lola, her sister, and the family cat Daisy. And they live in bubbles. And the children that they live with, twins, they pop their bubbles when the parents are away, and Lola is uncomfortable, but no one knows that she is uncomfortable, and she tries to communicate, but no one is listening. And that's when she searches for someone who can help her, who speaks her language and who knows about bubbles, so she can tell the grandparents who are watching the children and also educate other people. So it was very important to me. There are terrible books about dogs and children, and there are good books about dogs and children, but they don't have a story. When the books that would focus on safety, on the safety aspects, there is not the story that would capture or catch the kids' attention. So we read a lot of books. We have many books, and my kids now, they can read, of course, so they read it. We always read many books to them. And I know that there are certain books that they go back to a lot, and it's the books that have a good story, and the message is part of that story. So I always was telling I love storytelling, and we spend many hours. I spent many hours telling them various stories, and they always loved my stories. So it's something that I enjoy doing. And and then one day I just on the plane, good things happen on the plane, turns out. So I had this idea, and I wrote this book on the plane, and
we're grateful for it, and keep going on planes. And can we get your
me of all the people? And I'm not a happy flyer. I'm really scared of flying. So that's like,
but you distracted
irony.
yourself.
I did. Yes. I think I really needed something to focus on.
We're so excited. Where can we get your book? Where do we need to go? Number one, find out more about you for our listeners if they want to get more information and your resources, but also where can they go to get your book?
Well, it's been such a long process. So the website is Dog Meets Baby Expert, and active on Instagram. So it's Dog Meets Baby. And the book it will be on Amazon and hopefully in all the places like Target and Walmart and Barnes and Noble. But there will be links on the website.
Okay. The listeners go to the website, they'll be able to find. I did see you had a page for your book, and they'll be fed from there. Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah, it's because it's not live yet, so we haven't really. There will be a banner.
Okay. Well, by the time this episode is out, it might already be there.
Yes. Yeah. As I said, it's
look for the
next or a button or book or children's book or Lola and the Bubble Mission. I'm not sure yet. Yeah, I only have one book, so right now. So
if I see it, so guys, all these links, parents, I will put in the show notes, so you don't have to take notes or anything. Just go to the show. And also, if by the time this podcast episode comes out, the book is already out, I'll just directly link it to the book as well. So look in the show notes for the book and the resources, and definitely check out the freebies, because I downloaded about, I think, 4 or 5 of them, and they were really helpful and amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was so helpful. So thank you so much, Dominika, for spreading awareness to parents, things they might not know about or things they may be worrying about. But I think this conversation is so important. I really haven't seen it talked about a lot. And then when I found you, I was like, I have to have Dominika on Toddler Toolkit. This is so important. Your work is so important. And I'm just really grateful for all your journey and everything you've done. And we all are sending love out to Over the Rainbow Bridge to Lola for inspiring this whole journey and to help other parents. So thank you so much, Dominika.
Thank you so much for having me and the kind words.
You're welcome. All right, parents, I will see you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.